Welcome to Tuning In, Tuning Up, the UBC School of Music's companion chats to this season's Wednesday Noon Hour series. I'm Laurie Townsend. Today, our guest providing a music industry insider's view and their own personal professional listening tips is David Pay. David is Artistic Director of Vancouver's Music on Main, where he has earned an international reputation as one of today's leading edge programmers. He is also a UBC Music alumnus, and as a student, he stage managed our Wednesday Noon Hour series. Now, in more normal circumstances than we're in at the moment, he travels the world, sits on international juries, attends festivals, and produces brilliantly curated events here in Vancouver. Welcome, David.
Thank you so much, Laurie.
So great to have you. You know, we've known each other a very long time, and I admire the creativity and depth of your work greatly.
Thank you.
What is it that you are listening for when you are ideating? This is a word I love of yours, ideating. Then selecting the artists, composers, and collaborators for your projects.
Well, I think ideating is sort of an interesting idea because it's not just about having ideas, it's sort of being active in creating new ways of thinking about things. And so when I'm listening for new ideas. I'm listening for things that are bubbling to the surface, and I'm asking myself and I'm asking other artists, you know, what do we think the future will sound like? So I'm trying to hear what's relevant to what we're thinking about today. And I'm trying to balance that with what we're feeling and what we're needing emotionally or spiritually, but also what we're needing today, but also maybe next month and maybe even a few years from now. And I suppose that sounds a little bit like my listening is a kind of fortune telling, or I think of it as a kind of fortune telling, but it's really about listening for context. So we're alive today, experiencing the world today. How does our music making reflect that? That's the context I'm looking for. So whether it's a sound artist who's creating a new installation or a musician performing Beethoven, how does this performance relate to us today? How do these vibrations that are traveling through the air resonate in our bodies? How does it make us feel? What does it make us think? How does it help us connect to each other, maybe to ourselves? I don't know, in classical music planning, I think trying to think about the future and listen for the future can be really, really tough because so often we're booking 2-3 years out. So I'm also trying to think about what today might sound like a few years down the road, but trying to create space in my programming to respond to what I'm hearing right now and how the world is changing and what we need right now.
So over the years, attending concerts and watching you and listening you talk about your travels, I've actually been quite dazzled by your enthusiasms, your gifts of connecting with people here and everywhere, your love of wildly diverse music making, and your ability to combine, distill, and even conjure to create moments that touch people, audiences, me, to the core. So what is it about this world that you have discovered to do this magic?
I think maybe when you describe it a little bit as magic, I think it's being unashamedly or unabashedly engaged by this idea that we have magic and that we can all share magic and that we can have these emotional connections. And then thinking about how the world changes and what is the greatest context to to bring this piece to life for this audience. What is the best way that I can see to do that? And so maybe that's part of the conjuring, is to think, well, it doesn't have to be in this hall with this player, with this, way of doing things. And maybe that's also because I studied saxophone. As a saxophonist, I remember pianists would say to me, oh, well, you can't play Bach, or what, that's a transcription. I'm like, every time you play Bach on a piano, that's a transcription. It wasn't written for piano. And we become so used to contexts that sometimes we forget that we can change them. So I think maybe that's one of the things that I'm trying to do, is conjure up new ways, hopefully never gimmicky ways, but conjure up more ways for audiences and artists to connect through music.
Well, I find there's so much richness in your presentations. So much more for audiences to take in, not just listening and not just being witnesses in the room. How is it that you are introducing through your presentations consciousness into what's coming on stage, because we can feel it? And why are you doing it?
So thinking about that consciousness of different kinds of contexts, why is there an intermission in this concert? Why is this concert this long? Why is that piece coming after that piece? If you're speaking, why are you speaking? If I'm hopping up as the presenter and speaking beforehand, why am I speaking? And being able to answer these sort of big why questions. How do you want people to feel changed at the end of this concert, or the end of hearing this music, or experiencing this installation, or whatever it might be? And so 15 years ago, saying to a musician, well, why is there an intermission in this concert? Sometimes you'd stop. Well, we're just always supposed to have an intermission. Why? Like, maybe the best way for this piece to be experienced would be a 20-minute performance, and that's it. You know, there are all sorts of considerations that come into that. You know, if somebody's hiring a babysitter and, you know, leaving work early, do they want to do that just for 20 minutes? Or is the better way to experience this really, I put on a 4.5-hour concert with solo piano music once, a whole bunch of different pieces. And it really felt like it needed to be this kind of marathon listening experience to get to the end of how I wanted people to feel at the end of it. So it's not about dumbing things down or making them more accessible. It's about being conscious of the choices that we make when we're having those vibrations vibrate from body to body, and recognizing that there's a human being bringing music to another human being and their body. So it was strange 15 years ago, but I still remember Elisa Weilerstein was one of the first artists. She's a great, great cellist, and she was a friend, and she asked if she could play on the series. And that same year she was touring Japan as the soloist with New York Phil. So I was like, well, I don't know, are you going to do this thing? And so she came up, and it was really amazing to have her play a solo concert at Heritage Hall. She knew that it was going to be this informal thing with drinks and stuff. She thought the audience was going to be casual and not really listening, and that it would be a bit like playing at a wedding. And she was taken aback in a good way about the quality of listening that people brought to it. So it was, I think, strange 15 years ago to be able to do this, but I think it's helped foster a deeper sense of listening amongst audience members and amongst musicians. Because I would say to them in those early years, I would say, just treat this like you're in a living room, playing for people who love you, who really want to listen to how you want to make the music. And that would just, I think, open up musicians to feel like they could perform how they really want to perform, but would also help create an environment where the audience didn't feel a barrier between them and the musicians, and could just receive how the musician wanted to play as well.
Yes. This is, you're describing my experience. And I was really, really moved last fall at As Dreams Are Made. Your in-person, one-on-one project, when, you know, it was the only live music I had seen for so long. Actually, and I was taken to quite a mystical and magical place. I mean, that was me in the room and one musician, and it was incredible. I won't give away the mystical stuff, because you may recreate this someday. So do you feel what I'll call magic when you're creating your shows? Like, is there a moment when you know, I got it, this is gonna be great? Or are there many stages? Is it you know, the idea that when you're putting the performers all together and the venue and all of that, or like the moment when the audience gathers, or the first notes happen, or what?
But that idea of wanting to create magic, you hope, I just hope. And then in the normal work of presenting normal concerts, the magic, I think that there's maybe as a magic toolkit or something, or I say magic in quotes, there is a toolkit, I think, around how do I want an audience member to feel? How do I hope that they'll feel? What do audience members tell me they want? What do they love most in their listening experiences? And how can I create an environment, starting from when they walk through the door and they're greeted, to how they find their seats, to whether they know if the bar is open or where the bathroom is, to what happens when the lights go down and what does the speech say, or is there no speech? Like, just thinking about every moment in the concert presentation is my toolkit, right? Is that conscious thing that I do to hopefully bring magic that you feel at the concerts. Or if I want somebody to feel calm, or if I want somebody to feel distress, or I want somebody to just feel open to a new experience and new sounds they haven't experienced before. I think it's taking maybe a theater-based approach, but also an audience-based approach, imagining the audience's journey and trying as much as possible in advance to map out that journey and then deliver it so that they can just have an easy, open experience with the music.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, David. I'm sorry we don't have more time. I would love to keep talking because it's a pretty magical. So I know I use the word magic too much, but I mean, this is what it is for me.
There is something, and I love too that you've used the word magic when we're working on this Tempest project with Prospero, the magician, whose words you heard during that production. But there is, I think that's something that we shouldn't. We should really lean into. We should recognize as musicians, when we are sharing music with audience members, there is a magic in that. When you're composing something, when you're playing something, when you're making this vibration out of nothing that goes into people's souls, there's a kind of magic there. And the more we can create platforms for that magic to be shared, I think the better everybody's work in life will be.
Thank you. This has been fantastic. And thank you everyone who's been tuning in. Until next time.